Please welcome to the stage, City of Bellevue Deputy Mayor Jared Nieuwenhuis, Seattle Police Officers Guild President Mike Solan, Republican State Representative Dan Griffey, and your moderator, host of unDivided, Brandi Kruse.
Hi, everyone. Gentlemen, can we drop the formalities and can I just do Dan, Mike, Jared?
Absolutely.
Jared's like, no, call me deputy mayor every time. I wish I could see you guys. The lights are so blinding, but it was really nice to see people. I had to cancel my show today because I was physically exhausted, and people were like, I'll see you tonight. And I just wanted to say that I think it's awesome that you guys came out in person on a beautiful Wednesday, Wednesday evening, because it gives me so much hope that you're here because you care. You're here probably because you're concerned. And our friend, Dory Monson, when he passed away, one of the things that I said is, he trained people to be their own best watchdog. And more than ever, there's so few people. Jason does a good job of it, but there's so few watchdogs in media. And so the public, you guys have to step up and fill that role and be your own best watchdog. So being here tonight is a great start. So we're talking about drugs. I don't know if you guys knew this, but we got a little crisis on our hands. So I want to start with how you're seeing the drug epidemic manifest in other ways, because obviously crime is a topic, homelessness is a topic. Jared, I want to start with you because Bellevue's interesting. I feel relatively safe in Bellevue, but to what extent are you guys seeing the drug crisis seep into that city, and how is it impacting it?
Well, first, you are safe in Bellevue, not relevantly. No, so we're not immune to it. But having said that, we're a little bit hamstrung by some of the bills that come through the legislature. And the Blake bill, for example, really makes it challenging for our officers when we see possession, when we see open public drug use, and we have to refer them twice to treatment before we can actually arrest them. So this causes some challenges. However, we have a reputation in the city of Bellevue that we are constantly making arrests. If we cannot arrest you, usually if they're doing drugs, there's probably something else going on too. So there have been times when we can find something else to enforce the law, and the drugs just happen to be part of that. But we take a very hard stand on it as much as we possibly can within the law. But we do not want drugs in the city of Bellevue whatsoever. And thank you. And we want, but every city says that. But it starts off with a tremendous police department first off, and we support our police department, our brave men and women of our department, constantly give them the tools to make sure that they can enforce the law, even as challenging as it is at times, to ensure that Bellevue does not become a place where drug users or drug sellers really want to come.
Yeah, I love that we've gotten to the point where people applaud when you say we're going to arrest criminals. It's like, we have to celebrate that because it's so freaking rare, yeah. Right? But because you brought up Blake, I'm sure since you guys are in this room on a Wednesday evening, you're familiar for the most part with what happened with the Blake decision. So in 2021, the state Supreme Court struck down our felony drug possession statute, said it was unconstitutional. All lawmakers had to do is just add one word to the law to make it constitutional, but no, they saw it as an opportunity to maybe get toward decriminalization. So there was a special session to try to get a permanent Blake fix before there was de facto legalization on July 1st. Can you just go through, it was a very dramatic finish to the legislative session, but what that bill will do and how it might help with the current situation?
Well, thank you for the question. The Blake 2.0 fix, the one that we did in special session, would recriminalize hard drugs again. It would be a modified gross misdemeanor. We could not come to a conclusion on full misdemeanor. Gross misdemeanor would be up to 364 days in a county detention facility. It is heavily dependent, the success or failure of this piece of legislation, on funding, building, and staffing treatment facilities. I am really concerned that it's too heavily dependent on that. I don't know that we're going to be able to help enough people. So that's why I like the fact that there is some criminal sanctions. Before, the first bill that we failed on the House floor that I voted no on would have said that if you entered into a deferred prosecution with your court system, and you checked yourself out of the treatment facility, there was no sanctions. Now, you got to go back to the court and answer to the court for why you checked yourself out. A little bit more accountability. Still a lot of work to do, though.
Mike, I've been out with your officers, it's been a while, but downtown Seattle. And, you know, I've had times where they'll see somebody using it, sort of like, well, the Pete Holmes days when he was the city attorney, like, Pete won't charge that. How frustrating has it been for the officers of the Seattle Police Department, and I know the chief is going to speak to, and maybe he'll speak to this, to see the suffering on the streets and really be hamstrung in what they can do to try to help those individuals?
Yeah, I think as a cop, you're a human being, and the reason why you wanted to be a police officer was to help people in need and also catch bad guys, bad girls from doing bad stuff. And when you walk around downtown in particular, whether you're in uniform or you're out of uniform, and I see it, I'm downtown almost every day, it's a gut punch. Not to sound hyperbolic, but your ability to be an effective police officer is being removed due to activism, which I always call unreasonable activism, and you're watching humans decay in front of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And it's one of the reasons why, you know, we've lost close to 600 officers in 3 years. And it's only getting worse. And, you know, I try to be an optimist, to say, hey, there's brighter times ahead, because I have to lead the remaining cops and sergeants that are still working the street. And I can tell you that morale is the worst I've ever seen it, and I've been a cop almost, next month will make 24 years. Thank you. And I don't, as sad as it is, I don't think it's gotten to the level where people have had enough. And, right? I mean, it's unbelievable. So thanks for the question.
It's kind of terrifying to think what that bottom might look like. But just as a follow-up to that, because you mentioned the staffing issue, I guess even if the legislature did say, oh, let's make it a felony and put these people in prison, which I don't think anybody wants, you just want people to get better, but even if they had the tool and the political will in Seattle to say, yes, let's make these arrests, do they even have the resources to be able to focus on crimes like that as opposed to responding to 911 and violent crime?
Yeah, good question. No, we don't. You know, we recently did a poll to the Seattle voter, and out of 5 results, 1 being the biggest priority, 5 being the least, 1 was homelessness, then came the drug issue, fentanyl in particular, crime, and then a few other issues. You know, today I spoke with a sergeant in the SWAT team, and Seattle has a full-time SWAT team. They're very professional, and they partnered with the federal task force, and they actually did a warrant service on an armed fentanyl dealer in the north area of the city, and the community wasn't too particularly fond of seeing what they would deem militarized police go arrest an armed fentanyl dealer. But I don't think we're doing an effective job informing the public as to the reality of what we're dealing with. And we're allowing the activists to continue a false narrative that impacts us all. And I think it's had a detrimental impact that I don't see light at the end of the tunnel for the foreseeable future. But the only option we have is just to keep grinding. That's it.
And feel free to jump in if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to just say, I mean, the resource piece is so critical to this. Just as an example, we had a young kid, I mean, he was 26, died of a fentanyl overdose. Because the Bellevue Police Department is fully staffed, we were able to launch a 1.5-year investigation. We were able to track back exactly to who sold the fentanyl pills to this young gentleman who ended up passing away from an overdose. Now that took a 1.5 years and a lot of time and resources, but we did catch up to him, and now he's being prosecuted for that, for homicide.
You know what you said is that Bellevue PD is fully staffed. They took a lot of the Seattle cops. So I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah. I like the conversation about drug dealers, because when I look at a fentanyl dealer, and there was some bus with 100,000 pills or enough doses to kill every person in King County, I look at a serial killer. I mean, that's how I look at them, right? Because every pill they sell has the potential to kill someone. So Representative Griffey, at the state level, if there's political will from your colleagues on the other side of the aisle, what more can be done to treat them as such, to harden the penalties and dissuade some of those drugs from coming here, because the penalties are so high if they get caught?
Well, I mean, just like you said, there are certain crimes where you just throw away the key, right? You just don't get out and re-injure society. So we need to look at that. We need to look at, if you are distributing this drug, this harmful drug, and they're making it into fancy Skittle shapes and trying to addict children, we should make sure that they're isolated from society. Society has a right to do that. But we need to go after the tools that they use. We worked on a landmark bill this year to make it illegal to own the pill presses that clone the pills into the shapes of FDA-approved drugs with all the markings and all that on there. So we need the political will to really go after them and hold them very accountable. And if that means they have to stay the rest of their life in prison, then so be it.
And the pill press bill passed? The pill press bill passed?
It did.
And bipartisan, right?
It was. I was number 2 on the bill, but taking a lot of credit for it too.
Yeah, it's creative, yes. Take a lot of credit. Do you want to give a shout out to the Democrat who was on the bill?
Yeah, Mari Levitt, wonderful lady, and she gets it on fentanyl.
Gotcha. You see, we're just kumbaya here. We get along so well. Jared, Bellevue is interesting because crime doesn't stop at the border of a city. Luckily, you guys have a lake between. It's a little harder, and there's always traffic on the floating bridges, so it's a little harder to get over there. But how do you, and I think you've been successful so far, with a few exceptions, stop what's happening in Seattle from oozing over into your city?
Well, I think there's a lot of different reasons for that. I mean, first and foremost, I think we have a council that is very focused on what's best for the city. We don't tend to get distracted on issues that we have no control over, in terms of what's going on in the Middle East or other things of that nature. We are focused on, number one, public safety. We're focused on transportation, congestion issues. We're focused on keeping Bellevue a very family-friendly city. It's a safe place where people want to work and play and shop. And we really understand that, and that's why so many companies want to come to Bellevue. It's why people want to raise their kids in Bellevue. You do not see, very rarely, homeless encampments in Bellevue, and if we do see it, it is usually cleared within 24 to 48 hours. Now, we're able to do that because we do have facilities. Due to Martin v. Boise, we have to provide an opportunity to provide them with shelter or services, but we enforce our laws, and that's why I want to pick up on what you said about political will. We have the political will to enforce our laws. Unfortunately, not every city can say the same. But we're willing to do that, and because of that, we've been able to keep some of the craziness, if you will, on the other side of the lake, and we're very proud of that and want to maintain that because, I mean, I'm biased, of course, but I think we've created something special in Bellevue, and we want to keep it that way.
Mike, when it comes to officers on the street, the current council has been a little bit of a mess. Is that fair? But this year there's 7 of 9 seats that will be on the ballot in November. Is it 4 incumbents not running again, or is it 5?
5.
5 incumbents not running again. So there's really, and I agree, including 2 that have been the most detrimental, I think, to eroding the rule of law and public safety: Lisa Herbold, who somehow ended up chair of the Public Safety Committee, and Shama Solan. So for you, I will say for the record, I really like Shama Solan as a person. Her policies are obviously problematic, but I've always enjoyed our chats about our dogs. We found that one thing to connect on. But what opportunity do you think is here this year for the city of Seattle when it comes to these issues, like how we deal with substance abuse? What would your message be to voters, I guess, about what's at stake?
If you want more of the same, don't vote.
Oh.
Because that's the reality. The true point is that 25% on average of the Seattle populace votes. And more often than not, the type of personality that gravitates to a city council seat, I think, are people that don't really are a true reflection of the populace. And that's a problem. And we're seeing, I think you said, you have a council that doesn't go into areas outside the scope of what they're supposed to do. But we tend to have people that want to do that. And obviously you see the results. 2020, we've seen the decline, I think, from 2016 in terms of policing being politicized to an unreasonable level in the city of Seattle, where it was put on steroids. And there's an opportunity here to take back moderate, reasonable positions in politics with public safety. And I just, we're doing what we can, but obviously, we're being respectful of not having a tag of police behind a political candidate, because it could be problematic in the city. We're respectful of that. But there's a significant opportunity to take back what has been intentionally lost, impacting not only the people that live in the city, the people that live it, but obviously people in Olympia that are trying to right the wrongs, and then obviously Bellevue using water to block it all. And stealing our cops.
You want to add something quick?
Well, I just wanted to share a quick story. And, when people ask me about, Jared, what's the difference between Seattle and Bellevue? I usually tell them this story about what a Bellevue officer told me when he was called down to Bellevue Square, where a lot of people shop, and they had caught someone who was shoplifting. So put him in the cruiser, taking him back, and so the officer asks, so why did you decide to come to Bellevue today and steal? He's like, well, looking for greener pastures. I thought it'd be easier over here. It seemed like maybe there was a real opportunity here. And he goes, that's interesting. But then the suspect goes, but I got to tell you, officer, I'm shocked right now. And the officer, well, why are you shocked? You were shoplifting, we caught you, and now we're gonna, charge you. He's like, yeah, but if I was in Seattle, I'd already be back on the street and I'd be home by now.
That's true. So we have 1 minute left. And what I want to make sure to do, as much as we're talking about law and order, and I think we all value that as a society, I think Ann Davison, the city attorney in Seattle, said our laws are our values, which has always stuck with me. And if you're not enforcing your laws, then you're not abiding by your values. But I also want to make sure to note that, these are people who are truly suffering. I mean, people who are willing to take this new drug called Tranq that will rot away their flesh. I mean, I think it's hard for a lot of us to put ourselves in the mindset of that level of despair that you're willing to live in. So it's important to keep that kind of empathy front and center when we talk about how do we get these people to be contributing members of society again? Because that's what we all want, right? We want them to get better. So really quickly, like 15 seconds each, we'll start with you, Representative Griffey. What is the appropriate balance between compassion and accountability?
Well, I think it's important. Where I come from, we take the keys away from people that are impaired, and then we drive. We don't let them drive. Right now, the Washington State has turned into a place where we step over people in need. We need to provide resources and change the narrative. We need to be able to call 911. Resources need to be delivered. We got to give our 911 responders, which I was one for 34 years. We need to give them the resources so they can help people. He's right. All they want to do is help people.
Jared, we'll go to you and give Mike the last word.
Well, the bigger issue is here amongst all these agencies and nonprofits is they use this harm reduction model. And within that harm reduction model, there is very little accountability. Until we can change that, we're not going to see a big change. Because if we are enabling these, my heart goes out to them, these folks that are so addicted. If we can continue to provide them with the supplies, with the pipes, the needles, whatever, things are not going to change. We need to have accountability. We need to have a hammer, and that usually includes, or requires some type of legal remedy before they are forced to make a change. Are you going to get addiction help? Are you going to get some services that you clearly need, or do you want to continue to go down this path, which will probably have you dead within a year?
Mike, final word on that, balance between compassion and accountability.
Yeah, everything's about empathy and showing. The fact that you're all here for this panel shows that you care. And we have to embrace that and wrestle back control from the activist groups that are unreasonable, and we become the reasonable activist. It's okay. Activist is not an ugly word. You just have to be reasonable about it. And when you have your city council meetings, get involved. Show up for public comment. Vote. Start your own community groups. Take back control. Because if we don't, it's going to be gone.
Yeah. It's a good place to end. Bellevue Deputy Mayor Jared Nieuwenhuis, Mike Solan, President of the Seattle Police Officer Guild, Representative Dan Griffey, Republican representing the Allen area. Thank you for being here, and thank you for putting yourselves in a position to try to make a difference. So big round of applause for our panel.